This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Welcome everybody, welcome all our Torah Anytime viewers. Just a reminder, first of all, tonight's class we are learning Le'ilu Nishmat to Yisrael Levin and Elisheva Kaplan, the couple that passed away, what was it, about a few days, almost a week ago now. So Yisrael ben Yeshaya Halevi and Elisheva Basya Bas Yechiel Ephraim. Also, everybody's welcome to join us on our Thursday night women's only class at 1601 Quentin Road at the BJX. I guess we're usually on almost every Thursday, but you can always email me for further information. Okay, so let us begin. So we are continuing on our series where we spoke about, being that we sort of interrupted with Pesach, with the class about Pesach, but prior to that class, we gave a whole series of discussion about proving God, proving that there is a creator in the world. So thus far, bless you, thus far, whatever language you want. Thus far, we have proved the following. We have proved that number one, there is a God. Number two, we proved that God is actively running the world. And number three, which we didn't prove yet, is, which we're going to speak about later, if there is a God, and if God is actively running the world, there must be a purpose for this world. Anything that it gets created, there is a purpose for it. No matter how silly, how infinitely useless it might seem, there is a reason for that creation. It might just be a hobby, but nevertheless, there is a reason. So if there is a reason for the creation, then we need to know what it is. Think about it, and this is really where religion comes into play. Religion comes into play. We also actually proved the need for religion in the class we gave about moral relativism. So we have to figure out now that if there is a need for religion and there must be a religion, now which religion you're going to go for? There are so many religions out there. The reason why religion is so imperative in understanding the purpose is, you think of religion as an instruction manual. Imagine you go and you purchase I don't know if this is for consumer purchase yet, but they've been making these cars that also can turn into airplanes. I don't know if you've seen that. You're not talking about like 747 Boeings, you're talking about a little car that, it has like wings somewhere and it just like flaps out and then it turns into an airplane. Now imagine you go and you invest and you buy one of these. Are you going to be like, all right, whatever, I'll figure it out. I'll drive and I'll figure out how to turn it into to the spaceship and then I'll fly into outer space. You'll take flight courses, you have to learn all the laws, you have to learn all the aviation rules, you have to learn all these things, and you're going to go and you're going to study about it. The more intricate and complicated something is, the more that you have to study the instruction manual. What could be more complicated than this universe, this world? This world is so magnificent, there's so many components that come into play over here, and now you're over here, now what is the purpose? And that's really where religion comes in and say, hey, this is what your purpose is. The problem is, there are a lot of religions out there. In fact, there are roughly about 4,200 religions. So how are we going to know and figure out which one is the correct religions? So we'll go on, I guess maybe we should just do all 4,200 of them. No, we shouldn't? All right. So we'll go through the main ones, and once you learn the process, you'll be able to eliminate almost every single one through the process that I will B'ezrat Hashem show you. Besides having 4,200 religions, Christianity alone has 40,000 denominations. Which means that just shows you how every religion has subcategories. For example, Buddhism, which we're going to speak about today, there's 3 denominations, and there's also variations for that as well. The question that is asked is now, if you ask somebody, what is the right religion, what are they going to say? The one that I follow. So, it's kind of, I guess, pretty lucky for you that all of the religion, all of the cults, all of everything that's possible, you just got luckily placed into the right one. And in fact, one of the big reasons why people follow religions, well, one of the biggest reasons is that's what your parents told you. Whatever your parents follow, that's what you follow. And people don't really put two and two together and be like, well, is this the right thing that I should do? Maybe there's something else. Another big reason is what they say in the real estate world, location, location, location. Everything is about location. You grew up in a place that, let's say, was more Christian-based, so you're going to be a Christian, assuming that your parents are, open and they're not really in particular anything. You grew in a place in the Far East and they practice Hinduism, you're a Hindu. And that's basically how things roll. So faith cannot be just an accident of geography. Like, just where I happen to get placed, all right. And if I got right, then I got lucky. And if I got one of the 4,199 that was wrong, well, then, kind of sucks for that person. So, and in fact, many religions, if not most, believe that if you don't follow their religion, you're not going to heaven. That's like enormous consequence. It's not like, well, I was a good person, I tried my best, all right, and I messed up the wrong religion. Let's use Christianity, for example. Christians believe that you can be the best person, the biggest charity giver. You like literally, I don't know, what's the guy's name who was like really good, everything, I don't know, was it Gandhi? I don't know, Mother Teresa, someone like really crazy, right? If they don't believe in Jesus, that's it, you're done. Like, I don't care if you just supported the entire poor population. If you don't believe in JC, you don't have anything. That's it, you're done. So there's the fact of just being a good person is not so relevant over here, especially when you're looking at all these different religions and different cults, that if you don't believe theirs, you're done, you're finished. So we're dealing with something that has a tremendous amount of consequences. Also, if not all, the majority of religions contradict each other. So you can't be like, okay, I'll do like Islam on Tuesday or Fridays, I'll do Judaism on Shabbos, and I'll do Christianity on Sunday, and then throughout the week we'll touch it, just to be safe, So I'll just try to capture all of them. It doesn't work that way. Almost all religions contradict each other. Even look at one aspect. You look at, for example, JC. So Jesus, according to Christianity, he was the Son of God, depending on who you're dealing with, and a prophet, all the goodies. You go to Islam, he was a prophet. That's as far as. You go to Judaism, he wasn't Son of God, he wasn't a prophet, he was nothing. And you go to other religions, they don't even acknowledge, his fact. So you look at, for example, another example, you look at the creation. Judaism, Islam, Christianity, what you could call the Abrahamic religions, they all believe that there was a creation. Hinduism, for example, does not believe that there was a creation. The world was constantly evolving. And you could deal with Buddhism. Buddhism denies that the fact that there is a creator. So the question that lies is that not only is this an imperative research that needs to be done, but also the consequences are enormous. You could ask, how come God didn't just make it obvious? Like, why do we have to have so many religions and cultures? Make one very obvious, and we'll do it, and we'll finish with it. Why do we have there's so many different ones, and they're so similar to one another? And the answer, first of all, is that one does stick out. If you do the research, one sticks out as very, very obvious. But you have to do a little bit of research. But then you could ask, then the fact of just having a God, why doesn't it, just let it be obvious, let it be known, like day and night, let it be known obvious that there is a God. The answer is given based off Shir HaShirim. In Shir HaShirim, Shlomo HaMelech goes and compares us to the relationship between us and God is between like a chatan and kala, like a husband and a wife. In order to be in a relationship, it has to be something that on your own fruition, you wanted to be in that relationship. You can't be forced in a relationship. Some Islamic, countries beg to differ in those type of relationships, but in general, a good, healthy relationship. The spouse, each spouse says, I want to be in this relationship, and it's coming from your own free will, from your own intuition. If God would have presented himself as so obvious, like day and night, even though it is so obvious, but you have to just look a little bit in order to see it, but if it had been so obvious for everybody, like day and night, then there would be no free will. What would be free will? Now, of course, we'll have to do whatever God says. It's over there. Like, every time you do something wrong, you zap with lightning. Everybody's going to listen. There's not going to be any more free will. If there's not going to be any more free will, then we're just like robots. And if we're just like robots, then what is the purpose of everything? Which also leads us to a point of, you can't plead ignorance. Be like, well, I didn't know. You're not agnostic. Agnostic is like, well, I don't know if God exists. I don't know if there's a religion. I don't know, so I just do nothing. The problem with that is that an agnostic, or anybody for that matter, your action speaks a lot louder than words. You could claim that you're an agnostic, you're not sure. But, and I've had these conversations with Jewish people where they're like, well, I don't know. Is the Torah real? So my response to them, I'm like, if you don't know, wouldn't it be better to go on the safe side and just do it just in case until you find out the information? Like an agnostic cannot say, well, I just didn't know. If you're not doing anything, if you're not actively practicing whatever religion is that you're an agnostic to, or for all of them, then you're showing that you don't believe. If you would believe, you would do it. So it's very, very obvious based on your actions on whether you believe or whether you do not. You could understand it like this. If somebody comes over to you and say, hey, listen, don't go into that restaurant. It has food poisoning. You can be sick for a week. Assuming you don't want to lose weight and that's not your weight, loss, diet. So you go and you're like, really? But then you see a sign, 50% off, everything on the menu. So you're thinking back and forth, and you go and you eat in the restaurant. And they're going to be like, well, I just told you, well, I'm an agnostic to whatever you just said. Like, obviously you're not, because you didn't listen, because you're eating. You can't plead ignorance if you're doing it. Your action speaks a lot louder than your words. Okay. So now we have to figure out, how are we going to prove a religion? How do you prove a religion? The first thing is that you have to go inside of this, not necessarily only with an open mind. You have to be also open to understanding the truth. You have to actually be searching for the truth. And I'll give you an example of, let's say, we could call it an immature argument. Say somebody comes over to you and says, how do you know that your parents are your parents? And you'll be like, well, I have pictures, I guess. That's proof. I have pictures here that these are my parents. I'd be like, Photoshop. I'd be like, well, I remember when I was there, in that picture, so it can't be Photoshop. Be like, okay, fine, so you got adopted. And you got adopted really young. So then they go and they be like, well, I happen to just get a DNA test. And in the DNA test, it says that these are my parents. They'd be like, you paid off the DNA. The whole system. So if you argue like that, you can never win. It's like there's nothing to say. It's like, imagine somebody else comes over to you and says, what is your name? And you say your name is whatever it is your name. And he says, can you prove it? And be like, yeah, I have birth certificate, I have a passport, I have a social security card, all forgeries. What else do you want me to do? Tattooed on my forehead? Like, where else? How else can I prove to you? If somebody goes and completely is not interested, it's like an immature argument. The idea is where I call out this immature argument is when I'm arguing with an atheist. So if I'm arguing with an atheist and I go back and forth and there's science, so finally we get to a point where science doesn't have an answer, at least not a logical answer, and that is where the first atom came into being. Where did the first part of creation, if you're saying the Big Bang, we spoke about this in the Big Bang, we don't have to go back into it, but if everything was expanding, who created, somebody had to create, something had to create the first element, the first atom, the first piece of matter. And they say, listen, this is the responsibility. We don't know yet. It's like if they're reading directly from the website. We don't know yet. I'm like, you represent the scientific community? That's nice to know. So we don't know yet, but maybe science tomorrow will figure it out. I'm like, that's an immature argument. You're not being logical. If I'm giving you all proofs and you're just saying, well, we don't know, maybe I could refute you tomorrow, so I'm not going to listen to you. So you're not really searching. So when we're searching, we have to be searching for the truth. Okay, so now we're going to go through a few steps on how to prove that a religion is credible, and how can you validate a religion, if we may. Number one is, do we have reason to believe that this was a God-given religion? We have no interest in a man-made religion. That does nothing to us. Think of it this way. If you want to relate to God, you relate to Him on His terms, not on your terms. You don't decide what is right, what is wrong. Everything has to be from God-given. If there's a man-made religion, whatever, we have no interest in that. Usually, most religions, they start with a story. They have a story of either one or a few people interact with the divine, they get a message, and that is enough to pass this category. Fine, so you have a message. God came to you while you were hiking, a spirit came out to you and says, I have some stuff for you. By all means, that classifies it. You had a divine interaction. Whether it's true or false, we'll deal with it later, but there was a divine interaction. If you have no divine interaction in your religion, then we're stopping right there. There's nothing to talk about. This is obviously not a God-given religion, and I'm not interested in following a philosophy or a cult. Number two is, if it was a God-given religion, is it easily made up? Like, how do I know that it was really God-given? Maybe you told me that it was God-given, and there's no proof to it. You just made it up. So can we go and easily disprove it based on there's no evidence for it? You could also branch this off like a beautiful philosophy does not mean that it's true. And you look at, for example, did I bring these pictures in? Oh, I want to know if I brought it. I may have not. Oh, no, I didn't. I have to show this to you. I had, maybe I'll bring it next week. I had, many people see miracles. I'll give you an example. There was, what was that? Many people, they go into these near-death experiences, and they come out, and they'll be like, what did you see on the other side? And be like, well, I saw Jesus, and He came over to me, and He gave me a big hug, and He said, Mary, I want you to go down there and spread my word. And I don't know how many accents I got in there. It's supposed to be Western. They go in there and be like, you ask most people, how do you know how Jesus looks like? He had a beard, he had long hair, he was doing this, what was how do you we don't know. In fact, nobody knows that that's how he looked like. not only no one knows how, I don't know how they got that picture. I really don't. I really have to look into that. How they got the picture of the long-haired hippie, type of look. Because when you think about it, nobody that even read his books, wrote the Gospels, all the New Testament, was not even in his lifetime. So there was an artist that took it. Maybe the Last Supper. I don't know. I don't know how exactly that all went. But in any case, they claim that they see these things. So maybe that's the reason. People come back and they say, well, I spoke to God and God told me this is the right religion. And then God told me this is the right religion. There are, so what I wanted to show you is I had pictures that in there it's like pictures from like food where they see JC inside, or there's like ice cream that there's a picture of a face and they're like, well, obviously this is JC. There's like an orange where like it looks like someone's doing this, so that's JC. So like people generally see what they want to see and they believe what they want to believe. How do we know that that is true? So, and to branch us off in a little bit of a different angle, there are religions that claim to themselves as a noble upbringing, a very, very beautiful way of life. That doesn't constitute of truth. An example of this would be Confucianism or Taoism, one of the Chinese religions. That doesn't mean it's true. Just because it's nice, it doesn't mean it's true. Hinduism and Buddhism, for example, they'll say, well, you try by our experience, you'll go through our religion, you'll be like a better person. You go through our meditation exercises, you go through all this, you'll meditate in a tree for 6 years, you'll be just so relaxed. Of course, if you're sitting in a tree and you have nothing to do, you're either A, going to go crazy, or you're going to be pretty relaxed. Especially if there's some things growing around the trees that you could, use. So, the idea is, number 2, is, bottom line, if it was God-given, is it easily made up? Like, how do I know that it's a solid source? If it was one person that came and be like, hey, listen, I spoke to God, and God told me everybody has to have this cup, and hold it the whole day. Okay, here's $1, and keep on walking. So the idea is, can it be made up? If there's like 7,000 people and be like, hey, listen, we were all hiking together at a mountain, and then, all right, then that's a pretty, and like a divine being came, I'm like, all right, I gotta listen to that. That sounds pretty interesting. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3 is, if it was God-given, how do we know that it's current? Maybe, like the Christians say, that one was revoked, a new one was put into place. Part 2. Maybe. The Rabbi David Godley brings another 2 different points, and his points are more evidence-based. How, number 1 is called selective evidence. What does it mean by selective evidence? There is, I'll give you an example. Maybe it's easier to understand by example. The Islam claims that the proof of their religion is that Muslim had a very, very rapid conquest of Arabia and North Africa. They were able to conquer a lot of land in a short period of time. So they'll say this is obvious proof that our religion is correct. Somebody might argue, no, you were just good warriors, and that's why it's proof. So now, which one would be more, when you're being selective, when I said this to the guys, I was like, there is a gender that has selective hearing. So they said the woman, I'm sure you're going to say the men, right? The selective hearing, whatever it is, where you hear what you want to hear, you see what you want to see. So when you're giving me evidence, is it selective based on what you're presenting it? Like, I have just an easy, and in fact, a more logical explanation that disproves that. Another example is Christianity. Christianity says, how we know that this is a true religion? Look how far it spread to the entire world. Number 1 religion in population, nothing else, but population. So it goes, it's so great, must be that it's the right religion. I don't think so. Polytheism was very, very, almost the whole world was worshipping idols. Does that mean that it was correct? So there are many other differences of explanations. So when you're giving me evidence, I want to know that this is the best, most probable answer to that problem. That is number 4. Number 5 is something called positive truth. Positive truth means to have something that is more than just by truth by negative. I'll give you an example. Prophecy would be an example. Like, how do I know that it's that you're a right religion? So you have prophets in that religion, let's say, and that religion is able to predict the future and tell you what happens, and it comes into fruition as it was predicted. It gives you basically proof that there is an attachment of a divine power going on over here. Another branch of this, which is not as strong, but still a little bit good, is evidence by explanation. So something happens, but then you give an explanation after the fact. So that's obviously not as great as a prophecy, but it gives a little bit of positive evidence. To give you an example in I guess in nowadays and age, astrology. Astrology, we have a very, very good understanding of astrology that we're able to predict when eclipses are going to happen with exact accuracy. So we're able to predict it. Astrology, that's very good positive evidence. On the other side, earthquakes. Earthquakes, we cannot predict earthquakes. We can explain it based off the plate tectonics and how they move under the ground. So we can explain the earthquakes, but we cannot predict it. And that is a difference. So when we want to see a religion, we want to see something that has positive evidence. So those are the 5 things that we're going to plug into the religions. Some religion will just be done with one, and we don't even have to go through the entire 5 because we already refuted it by 1. Make sense so far? Is that clear? Okay. So now we're going to start with speaking with Buddhism. Buddhism, the reason why I started with Buddhism, first of all, I do have to put out an halakha. Oh, thank you. I do have to put out an halakha that the Rambam says in Hilchot Avodah Zarah that idols, you're not allowed to mention their names. So if there's a certain the religion, we can mention the name as long as it doesn't represent the actual idol. But an idol itself, you're not allowed to even mention their name because it says lo taskiru. So some of the things that were mentioned, Buddhism, not so much Hinduism, there's going to be a lot of parts that I'm not going to be able to mention, and we'll mention it by then.
I have to ask, like that elephant, I don't want to say it now.
Yeah,
elephant thing.
And that's Hinduism.
I can't. Is that?
Yeah, you're not supposed to. Yeah, you're not supposed to say the names.
Yeah, of course I know the name, but I want to say it now, just out of.
Well, you shouldn't. Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
You're not allowed to say idol worship. Idols, particular idols, you're not allowed to say their names. Not even mention their names. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well. And the halacha goes even deeper. You shouldn't even make other people mention their names. There's a lot. Yeah. Be like, oh, what was that idol? Like you can't do that. So, also that's evil and sadistic. But okay, so let's begin with Buddhism. Buddhism, first of all, Buddhism comes from the word buddhi, which means to wake up. So it's sort of an enlightenment. It's a philosophy of awakening. The reason that I picked this one to do first is, first of all, I wanted to do a class on Buddhism in general because, surprisingly, not a lot of people know about this, but in America, Buddhism compromises the entire Buddhist community. 20 to 30% of them are Jews. No. Jews are so much, and not only that, but there's actually a term. Because they go to the Far East, so but they usually don't go for religion when they go to Far East. They do it for other things.
But a lot of them end up.
They do end up, unfortunately. But that's more Hinduism. But yeah, Buddhism also comes into play. They're both hand in hand over there. There's actually a term for Jewish Buddhists. It's called Jubu, Jubu. Yeah. So and not only that many of the prominent Western Buddhist teachers are Jewish. So not only are the Buddhist people, even the people that are teaching them are Jewish. So, and we'll speak about a little bit later what attracted Jews so much into Buddhism. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted to put this one of the reasons I wanted to do in general a class on Buddhism. So we'll put it together in this. Okay, so let's try to understand the way that we're going to go and delve into refutation of these religions, if I may, is first of all understand them. Give a little bit about their background, their philosophy, and then we'll be able to either tear them apart slowly or, depending on the situation at hand. So, Buddhism, it's a very, very large religion. I want to say it's the 4th most populated religion.
I feel like that's right, and I don't know why. 350
to 500 million followers. I want to say it's either the 3rd or 4th. I don't remember I don't remember where it holds in the polls. But so Buddhism is a very, very popular religion, and there is 3 different variations, I guess, or different sects of Buddhism. There is one. The main one is Mahayana, which is more of a polytheistic, branch of it. The other one is Theravada, which is an atheistic branch of it, and then we have the Vajrayana, which is basically like the Mahayana, but it has more rituals. It has yoga incorporated in it, and other different exercise and rituals involved in it. So, Buddhism by far dominates the Western culture, the Eastern culture. So all the Confucianism, everything from the East that comes into the West. Buddhism is by far the dominant one that comes into and it is able to encroach on the West territory. And in fact, in Australia, the Australia Bureau of Statistics, they held that Buddhism is the fastest growing spiritual tradition in Australia in terms of percentage gain. They grew 79% from 1995 to 2001. 1996, 2001, which is a tremendous amount of growth for a spiritual religion. So they were growing tremendous in that area. So what is the origins? How did it start, Buddhism? So there was a wealthy Eastern prince by the name of Siddhartha Gautama. And he lived about 500 BCE. So you're talking about 2,500 years ago. That's when he lived. He lived in a part of India, northern India. And what happened was his father was like a king, a ruler, a very high and powerful official. And he had his son, and we'll call him Sid, right? Little Sid. And I don't know if that's what we call him, but it's just easier than the Indian version. So Siddhartha goes, and as he's growing up, back then they would very much participate in looking at the future, especially rulers. They always want to know who is going to overtake them over power, which means who's going to be the next ruler after them, because then they have to know if it's going to be an invasion, who do they have to worry about. But this particular ruler, his father, he wanted to know what's going to be with his son. So he went over to this, spiritual dude, soothsayer, who tells the future. And he paid the $5, opened his pot, I don't know. So he goes and he says, he tells the king, says, your son is either going to be a very, very powerful king, maybe even an emperor, or he's going to be a spiritual leader. So the king didn't want his son to be a spiritual leader. He wanted him to continue in the footsteps of the family business, and obviously rule that. So he decided that he is going to remove anything spiritual or anything that moves somebody to spirituality away from his upbringing. So what he did is that this king went and he didn't allow anybody he basically sheltered this child that he shouldn't see old people, sick people, death, or anybody that's devoted to spirituality. Nobody's allowed to see that. So he basically was confined. They had 3 palaces, and this poor prince, he was only able to go in the 3 palaces, and that's it. He wasn't able to do anything anymore. When he came to about 16 years old, he got married, and quite some time after that, he started getting curious about the world. He's like, what's out there? Like, maybe there's something more out there. I want to see out there. So he goes to his father. His father says, fine, you want to see what's out there? Not a problem. And they arranged a parade. Now, the father made very certain that anybody who's going to be in the parade is not going to be sick, is not going to be old, there's not going to be any funeral processions, there's not going to be any spiritual people. Make sure that he sees only what he wants him to see. So they start on the parade, and somehow an old man happened to stumble across the road, and the prince is like, what's that creature? Like, what, wrinkly skin? What is all this stuff? So he got very curious, and he started running after this old man. The old man saw him, started running away. And while he was chasing this old man, he saw what Buddhism calls 4 different sights, 4 troubling sights. He saw the old man, then he saw somebody who was severely ill, and then he saw a funeral in process. Now, before we get to the 4th one, he was with his friend, bodyguard, whatever, and he was like, what's going on with this? I've never seen this before. What is all this, things that I'm seeing for the first time? So he said, listen, this is the way of life. This is how we all live. People get old, people get sick, and people die. And he was very troubled. He's like, what? He's like, I don't know how they did this, but they must have sheltered him really well. He's like, what? People get old and sick and die? He's like, unbelievable. And then he saw the 4th sight. The 4th sight was, he saw this monk who removed any physical temptation, just completely in the spiritual thing, and he looked at his face, and it was so peaceful, and that was the 4 sights that he saw. So when he went back home, he was very troubled, and he decided that his goal in life is going to be to find the key to happiness. He says, there's so much suffering, there's so much terrible stuff in this world, so he says he has to figure out the solution to all this. So at the age of 29, he goes in the middle of the night, and he gives a kiss to his son, his wife, and he sneaks out of his palace, and he goes out to the real world. He gives up all his worldly possessions, and he starts following. He goes begging and starts trying to uncover all of life's great questions. So he started studying Hinduism, but he was disappointed, didn't find any real answers there. He studied this for a few years, and after 6 years of going in through all these different religions and traditions and trying to figure out what is the answer to all his problems, he decided that he's going to sit under a tree, under a fig tree, and he's going to meditate over there until he gets all his answers answered. He's going to meditate until he finds the right answers. So he went, according to their tradition, and he succeeded in a week-long meditation period. Ask people if they can meditate for 45 minutes. Ask people if they can meditate for 3 minutes. So he was able to do a week long. Pretty impressive. So,
well, there wasn't phones back then.
right, he wasn't checking his Twitter account. Okay, exactly. So he goes and he meditates for a week long, and then after the week, it was 6 days or something, or a week. After a week, he wakes up, whatever. He gets up, he's like, I got all the answers. That's it, he finished. He got all the 6 years of random studying, and a week long, he got all the answers, and that's when he became the Buddha. And so now he's the Buddha. For the next 45 years of his life, he went and he spent, giving off all his knowledge, his information. So,
is that Buddhism started?
Yeah, that's how Buddhism started. No, this is
came back and.
No, for the next 45 years, he went around and be like, hey, you want to know how to get rid of suffering? Okay, all right, come, follow me. You got to wear this yellow robe. No, whatever. I'm saying it came up over a period of time. But for the next 45 years, he went and preached this new understanding, this new way of life, this new religion.
He lived so long? Sorry.
Yeah.
Wow.
He lived, according to, I don't know, I don't have his medical records, but according to them, yeah. So if we stop the story right there and we ask, not over here if we can verify if it's true. Back then, can we verify that it was true? I don't know. Did he succeed in having a week-long meditation? Nobody knows. He went under a fig tree. Was there any eyewitnesses? Probably not. Yeah, it was in my backyard, and he didn't move for like a week. I kept checking him. There's no, how do we know that? We don't even know. But let's go on and let's indulge, if we may. The Buddhism holds of something called Four Noble Truths. And by the way, let me mention, there was no mention of any divine interaction over here. There was no mention that, he was meditating, and he was, in his zone, and suddenly feels a tap on his shoulder. And he turns around, and no one's there. But he looks up, and there's an angel floating. And he's like, do you have an answer for or do you have questions? And he'll be like, yeah, I do, actually. And, there was no interaction with divine. It was just like he was in a trance, and he was like, oh, I got it. The answer is C to all the questions. So he went, and he figured out. This is how he went, and this is how he went and he started teaching. He said there are four noble truths. What are the noble truths? Number one is life always has suffering. Always has suffering. You get introduced to Buddhism, it's number one is suffering. Life is all about suffering. Number two, what is the cause for suffering? That's the craving. When you crave something and you can't get it, then you suffer. So and this is, by the way, if you ever realize, you look at pictures, you see Buddhist, monks, they wear usually yellow type robes. Why yellow robes? So back in the jungle where it originated, near where it originated, not in the jungle, the leaves, before they would fall off, would either turn yellow, orange, or brown, and then that's how you know the leaves are about to fall. So yellow became their color because that is the idea of just letting go. Letting go of all your cravings, all your desires. You don't need it anymore. And that's the idea of what part of the Four Noble Truths. So number one is suffering. Number two is the cause of suffering, which is cravings. Number three is how do we get rid of that suffering. So the way to get rid of that suffering is by eliminating the cravings, those desires. If you get rid of the desires, then you don't have suffering anymore. And in fact, the central aim of Buddhist teachings is to overcome suffering. Anything else that does not remove suffering is irrelevant. So there's one main goal in that religion is to remove suffering. And if you're able to go and you're able to remove the suffering, then you reach a path, something called nirvana. And this is nirvana, this is the enlightenment, this is where you get rid of all of the suffering. The fourth of the Noble Truth is the path. How do you get to that? And then they go through the eight paths of Buddha, eightfold path of Buddhism, which we don't need to get into. It's basically practical moral guides and also the mental thought training for their correct path. So now, this is the fundamental teachings of Buddhism. Those are the Four Noble Truths. The doctrine of Buddhism. So when it was written, by the way, so about the 1st century BCE is when it was written. You're talking about nothing was written on Buddhism for about a few hundred years until after he died. And that's when all of a sudden things started to get written. Until then, it was only by word of mouth. So now, if we have that basic idea, basic overview of Buddhism, if you would ask a Buddhist, do you believe in God? Do you believe? So there's no mention of divine. And in fact, if they believe in God, their answer, first of all, the short answer is no. They do not believe in God. And according to the founder, he neither affirmed nor denied the existence of God, which we're going to have a huge problem with, and we'll speak about it momentarily. But if you ask him just in general, no God, and there's no soul. There's no immortal soul that's dealing with. There's consciousness and transferring of the consciousness, but there's no actual soul. The way that this religion spread is as it grew. There was other neighboring countries that worshipped idolatry, or even his country itself. They worshipped different idolatries. So these were incorporated. When they came into Buddhism, they took along their idols with them, and they started doing it together. And this is how, because a big part of this was Hinduism. And a big part of Hinduism in Buddhism is they worship also Hindu idols. I have a friend who is, his name is Akshay, who actually helped me out over here, because he grew up in India, and he practiced Buddhism and Hinduism. And so he mentioned that also, like in his, upbringing, they would go to Buddhism itself involves a lot of avodah zarah. He brought me proofs on what they do for avodah zarah. We'll see if we have time to delve into all of them. But there's definitely idolatry built into it. Now, according to the hardcore instruction manual of Buddhism, there's no God, there's no idolatries in them, and in fact, according to the original thought of Buddhism, is don't deal with gods. They're irrelevant. They can't help you. There's nothing to talk with that. Don't bother with divine intervention. It was this was already even pushing it even lower down than that already was. So this is where it gets a little bit tricky, because there is no divine power in Buddhism. A lot of Jews can get sucked into this, and this is one of the reasons that Jews get sucked into Buddhism, is because they see this and be like, well, it's avodah zarah, it's idolatry. We can't do idolatry. No, we don't believe in God in here. Oh, so what is it? No, we practice meditation, we do all these things. So it gives an opening to the Jewish people, or anybody else for that matter, that they could go and get into the religion because they don't feel like they're cheating on their God. There's no other God in it. So this is one of the reasons also that that Jews unfortunately get attracted into this. Also, another reason is Jewish people practice Judaism. They claim there's no spirituality in Judaism. Everything is just rituals and laws. I'm like, I don't know what religion you're practicing. It's probably the Reform, Conservative, or even modern Judaism, which I have a huge problem against, because it's like if you're doing something through the motions. You don't even know what you're doing. You expect to have any connection to something, that you're just going through the rituals, going through the motions without have any feeling, any emotion, any interaction, any understanding of what the true Judaism is. So unfortunately, these Jews who didn't have a true understanding of Judaism, didn't have a true practice of Judaism, felt that it was lacking spirituality. So look at this spirituality in Buddhism. They go and they sit and they don't talk for 10 years. They do all the their aesthetic type of beliefs and things like that. So and this is also where meditation comes in. I don't know why people don't know. Meditation was first of all, Judaism came before Buddhism, and meditation is already in Judaism. I guess it's not maybe popular or something like that. So yeah. So that's number one. That's where we're up to number two reasons for people to go into for Jews to go into Buddhism. Another reason is there's no history with Jews and Buddhists. It wasn't like the Buddhists tried to go and destroy us and attack us and convert us. There was no history, so there's no ill feeling. For example, Christianity, we had the Crusades. Islam, we currently have all the jihad against us. We have a lot of conflict in there, but here there was no history, so it's a little bit easier. And finally, the Buddhism has an open invitation. If you want to be a Buddhist, it'd be like you come to a Buddhist temple. Let's say you shouldn't. Somebody goes to a Buddhist temple and says just browsing, looking around the aisles and whatever they have there, and be like, well, do you want to maybe sit with one of our advisors or whatever they call them? And they'll be like, no, I can't. I'm a Jew or I'm a Christian or I'm whatever, and they'll say, well, listen. You don't have to leave your religion to be a Buddhist. You could practice Christianity, Judaism, Islam, whatever it is, and do Buddhism. There's nothing conflicting in it. And they claim you could be a good Jew, a good Christian, a good whatever, and practice Buddhism, which can be the furthest from truth, involved in it. So, for those reasons, Jews, unfortunately, get sucked into Buddhism and thinking that it's not a problem, it's not so much of a issue, so much of a problem. The problem that I want to deal with now is Buddhism claims like this. Buddhism claims that they neither affirm nor deny the existence of of God. So Rabbi Akiva Tatz, he wrote a book. It's called "The Letters to a Buddhist Jew" or something like that. Letters to Buddhism. It was a book. It was a correspondence between him and a Buddhist Jew. So very interesting. If you want to learn more about this, he's a great author, great writer, great speaker, Rabbi Akiva Tatz. So. He writes like this. He writes in his correspondence between this Jew and this Jewish Buddhist and himself. He says, "What does this mean that they don't deny the existence of God? Like, what does that mean? You don't deny that existence? If you mean that God exists and you're not interested in investigating what God says, then you're just crazy. Like you're just outright foolish. Just crazy. If God doesn't exist, then what do you mean deny? Either yes or no. It's just sort of like, I don't want to touch it. Hot, cold, I don't know, whatever. Just leave me alone. It makes absolutely no logical sense to either pursue it or don't pursue it at all and deny the entire existence. The problem that leads on to this is that where do you deal with your morality? So every religion has a moral code, and Buddhism is all different. We're not going to get into it. They have different paths of there's different 5 basics of morality. But what is their power of authority to say like this is what morality is? Who gave you the permission? I'll give you an example. It's so easy to refute anything when you don't have a divine power. So one of the things that they say is like this: how do you know if you're doing something, if it's right or wrong? So they have a blanket formula. You plug in this formula, you know if it's right or wrong. What is this formula? The formula is based off 3 things. Number 1, what is your intention? Is your intention good or is your intention bad? Number 2, what is the effect that this action will be on yourself? Number 3 is what is the effect that this action will be on somebody else? If those things will be positive, then you know it's a good thing to do. If it's negative, then you know it's a negative thing to do. I was like, I have huge problems with that. I'm like, I'll give you an example. Let's say there is a multi-billionaire. And this multi-billionaire has tons of cash just lying around everywhere. And you decide you want to be Robin Hood. You want to steal from the rich and give to the poor. That's what Robin Hood does, right? Yeah. I don't know why we teach this to children. I seriously do not. When you open Goldilocks and the 3 Bears, I'm going to go off on a red tangent right now. If you see a beer house, you don't run. Don't taste their food and sleep in their beds. Robin Hood, steal from the rich and give to the poor, and everybody's go befriend a tiger and a bear these things like this is what you're teaching your children. This is what it's like. Okay. Anyways, I can go on. Living under the sea. Teach kids go breathe under the sea, and maybe that whatever. Okay, move on. So let's say, moving back to our situation, you're going here. You want to be Robin Hood. There's a multi-billionaire. You see $1,000 cash lying over there. Now you want to take that $1,000 and you want to give it to a poor person. Now you don't want to steal, so you're going to borrow without asking. Air quotes. So because stealing is obviously bad. So you're just going to borrow, pay back. One day. We'll pay back just one day. You take this $1,000 and you give it. Now let's break down according to Buddhism. Was your intention? It's good intention. It's pretty good intention, right? You gave all the money. You didn't even take 10% for yourself. There's no fine to say. You just gave everything. Did the person suffer from? What was your effect on you? And you was indifferent. Whatever. It didn't matter. You did a good deal. What about the effect of your action on others? Well, for the poor person, he got $1,000. So that was thumbs up for him. For the rich person, he's a multi-billionaire. He's not even know that it's gone. He's not even going to realize that it's gone. So it can be 0 effect on him. So according to the Buddhism theory, right, and again, this is not a great example because technically you could say it's stealing and Buddhism say don't steal, but you can see where I'm going with this, that the idea is flawed. If you're basing off a formula, and this formula is based off human logic, then you're done. I could easily manipulate that formula and change it and feel like everyone's going to be happy. Because if he finds out that I really gave charity from the money, he will be happy that I took the money for him. And there you go. Everybody's happy. I did a great deed. And according to Judaism, no, you just stole. You just an act of thievery. Another problem that we have with Buddhism is that there's a lot of bowing in Buddhism. Everyone just bows down to this. So when you go to a Buddhist and be like, if you don't practice any worship of a god, why do you always bow down to the Buddha? And they have statues of Buddha in all their temples. In fact, if you go to a Buddhist house, they have pictures and statues and little shrines, not shrines, or whatever that's called, little mahogany wooden Buddha things. And so you have over there. They even ask. I remember when I was looking into this, they were like, one of the questions was why is Buddha always fat? Like happy person, which bothers me also, right? Because he had to give up everything. I'm like, and he went around begging. Who gave him so much food for free that he was able to, get that nice pudginess? So, good, healthy thing.
From starvation?
Well, not in the face. That's in the stomach.
Was he a prince to begin with?
He was, but he ran away from everything.
So he ran away from
Yeah, of course. He wasn't a Buddhist in his prayer. He wasn't like, as people were feeding him peeled strawberries, he was like, meditating. He was doing it in the forest or whatever, So the question is, what's up with the bowing? If it's not, what's with the bowing? So Buddhism explains, bowing is not, we're not worshiping. We're sort of like when you go and when you show respect for somebody. A parent walks in, a teacher walks in, you stand up. That shows respect. According to Buddhism, they bow to show respect. So Rabbi Akiva Rabbi Akiva Tatz goes and he breaks this down. He says, first of all, bowing in general is very, very problematic in halacha. And halacha bowing in general, because bowing is represented by avodah zarah. Obviously, bowing to like royalty and things like that is a little bit different in regards to humans. But bowing to a statue, all of a sudden there's a blanket issur on bowing. And then he goes on to explain avodah zarah. How do you understand avodah zarah? You think about idolatry. The Torah commands us, do not serve idols. Why? Like what? Like who in the right mind will take a piece of wood and a knife and chisel out like a face, put it on the table, and start bowing to it and praying to it? I'm like, that should not be, the Torah should say, don't be crazy. Don't be gullible. Don't serve idols. Who is idiotic enough to paint something and be like, this is a god? This is a higher power. This is what brought me into this world. That's idiotic. That's crazy. But yet the Torah does go and it gives us a prohibition: do not serve idols. Which means there must be something very real about this. There must be something much more deeper than just bowing down into just a piece of wood. So to understand this, we have to understand astrology. How does astrology work? And I'm talking about more ancient astrology. Ancient astrology, they were able to look at the stars and they were able to tell you what will happen in the future, sort of predict the future. Now, how are they able to do that? So, to understand this, you understand if it's not predicting the future, because that's prophecy. They weren't predicting the future. They weren't telling you what the future was, but it was reading the present really, really well. And now, to understand it like this, imagine you're what is it called when a botanist, or someone who's really into flowers, fruits and vegetables and seeds, whatever. Make believe we know that.
Something like the...
Yeah. So you show this specialist, botanist. Yeah, that's what I say. Botanist. I pronounce it wrong. Okay. So you go and you show this botanist a seeds, and it'd be like, if I put these seeds in the ground, what's going to come? I'd be like, well, this is an apple seed, this is an orange seed, and this is mint. I don't know if it has seeds, but whatever. This is apple and orange. So be like, wow, are you a prophet? How did you know? Be like, no, because I know this is an apple seed, and this is, I just know because I know. The same thing, the astrologers, they were able to read the stars. The way that it worked was in astrology is there is energy, if we could call it energy, that comes in from the spiritual realm into the physical world. And it passes through the astrological signs. So when you're reading the stars, you're not predicting the future. You're saying, okay, I see this is the energy that's coming, this is the energy that's coming, and you're able to understand the present, just like someone who knows about seeds is able to understand what's going to come out from those seeds when it gets planted. So, and this is really how we understand, in the deeper reality, there's all one. In the heavenly realm, it's all part of one. Right? There's all oneness. When it gets into this world, it splits up and it differentiates into different beings, different things, different. Everything is just different. So the question is where does it separate? Where does it go from that oneness to the separation? And the answer is that's in the zodiac realm. In the zodiac realm is where things divide and they separate into their separate energies. Think of it like this: you have a water basin and you drill a bunch of holes in this water basin and you pour water to fill it up. Now, as the water is dripping out, it's pouring out of different holes. But is it different water? It all stems from the same source. So similar to the same idea, that's how you can understand the zodiac and how do you understand astrology and how do you understand how they could predict the future. What is idolatry? So idolatry is dealing with that middle ground where things separate. If they're able to manipulate something or go into something, it's dealing with that. Think of it this way. Rabbi Akiva Tatz explains like this. He says, imagine someone's going into a store and he wants to buy something. And the item is, let's say, $1,000. He doesn't have $1,000, he has $100 because he didn't steal the guy from Buddhism. But he only has $100. And he goes, looks around, and there's nobody around except the sales clerk. And he says, listen, I'll slip you this 100. Give me that piece of that merchandise. That is what idolatry is. Idolatry is not dealing with the owner of the store, dealing with that. I just want to get what I want to get. However I get to it, I'll buy from you whatever, so I could cut corners and whatever I could get to whatever I get to my desire. That is idolatry, and this is why idolatry has rituals. There's magic involved. There's a usage of demons. In the ancient, idolatries, they incorporate all these different rituals. Why? Because it's getting what I want. If a demon is going to get me what I want, if this magic is going to get me what I want, they incorporate it into the idolatry, and that's how they get it. So it's a real thing. It's not something that's fake. It's a real thing. But the worship, the goal, I guess, of worship is very, very different. In a true service of Judaism, God is everything. That is the center. That is the focus. In idolatry, I am everything. I am the focus. How do I get what I want to get? For idolatry is what can these idols do for me? For God is what can I do? So you understand that there's a very big fundamental difference between the serving of idols, not just the worship itself, but actually the underlying reasoning behind it. And now when we plug that information into Buddhism, let's see where it comes down. First of all, it's interesting. This, the Buddhist, the originator of Buddhism, in the middle of the night when he was 29 years old, he wakes up, or he didn't go to sleep, he goes and he kisses his little child and his wife and he leaves. Why? Because he has suffering and he has to deal with his suffering. What about the fact that his wife's not going to have a husband? What about the fact that his son is now not going to have a father? What about their suffering? No. It's about my suffering. I have to figure out my answer to I have to answer the questions of my problems. When it's all about me. And this is why we have the Gemara in Shabbat, page 105b, says that if someone gets angry, it's as if he worshipped Avodah Zarah. It's as if he worshipped idolatry. And the question is, why? Why does anger have to do this? We gave different answers previously, but another fundamental reason is when you're getting angry, everything is only about me. How could you do this to me? I am angry because how is it possible? Do you know who I am? You get angry because you feel that someone wronged you. Who are you? Why are you comparing? Because you're putting yourself on such a high pedestal, that's like you're worshiping yourself. You're worshiping yourself. The same idea, it's that egocentric viewpoint, and that is that is the crux of idolatry. It's all about the ego. It's all about me. It's all about what I can get, what I want. So now, if all in all, it's really the entire Buddhism, there's no God, there's no divinity, there's no nothing. So it is really fitting a certain pasuk, part of that what we say in Aleinu L'Shabach. We say in Aleinu Shabbat, Shehem ishtachavim lehevel varik. They go and they bow down to nothingness, to emptiness. Umispalalim eleh lo yoshia. And they pray to a God that's not going to answer them. You know why? Because they're really, this is such a true thing. They're praying to something that they know is not divine, that they know is not powerful. And by the way, there is what my friend from India mentioned. He says there are some things that they actually pray to the actual Buddha. They actually turn it into an actual Avodah Zarah. They actually pray to the actual idol worship. It's nothing, and they know it's nothing, and that's why they're praying to something. This is what the pasuk says, and there is no answer. So, we're almost finished. A few more minutes will be done. Besides the fact that when Buddhism started, it was also through Hinduism. Did I say this already? They incorporate a lot of idols. Okay, I'm not sure where we're going on over here. Okay, so, but there's also something very interesting that Buddha is often believed to be the ninth and latest reincarnation of a certain idol that I can't say the name, but a certain Avodah Zarah. He is an incarnation of that idol. So now we have to now let's see if we can refute this. And this is one of the easiest religions to refute. Why? Because the question is, the first thing that we said, is this a divine religion? Is this a religion given by God? And the answer is no. Even according to Buddhism, no. Was Buddha God? No. Was he a messenger of God? No. Was he a son of God? No. He was nothing to do with God, no divine thing. So that's it. The question is done. What am I going to follow a man-made religion? Oh, but it's a peaceful way of life. I'll meditate myself. I don't need to go and bow down to a Buddha and wear a yellow robe and give up all of life's great things that you could have just because of your philosophy that you have. And in fact, the idea about it is Buddhism claims that this is how it's going to get you to happiness. Who says? Maybe your happiness. If you're telling me that a man came up and says this is the way to happiness, happiness is subjective. You say that is your happiness. Happiness is starving yourself, sitting under a tree, and meditating for 6 hours. I say it's eating a steak while listening to Shua. That is happiness. What makes your happiness right over mine? You're not a divine being to tell me that this is the right happiness. It's your own personal experience. Very nice. I don't agree with you. That is not the way to happiness. In fact, I think there's a different way to happiness. Some people say there's certain medications that lead to happiness. There's some people have other different viewpoints of it. So who are you to say that this is the only path to happiness? And this is why this is actually why a lot of scholars don't like when Buddhism is called religion, because it's not a religion. It's not psychological therapy, you can call it. I don't know. It's a long therapy session for your lifetime. I don't know, more than that, what is it? So, Buddhism doesn't offer anything. It doesn't offer you a life purpose. It does give you a life purpose, but get rid of suffering to get into nirvana, get rid of cycle. All useless information. Not based off what? Based off some guy who meditated under a tree. So, Let's see how this compares to Judaism. Can this offer? So we refuted it. This is an easy one to refute, not divine nothing. But let's see, is there something in Buddhism that Judaism doesn't have? The Buddhism goes and says part of the Four Noble Truths is, the third one is to end all suffering, is to remove all cravings, all desires. Only then can we begin to live fully. So we know that, first of all, this is not something new to Judaism. We know in Pirkei Avot, Rabbi Yaakov Omer, Ha'olam hazeh domer lepuzdo. This world is compared to a hallway, which means there's no point in time and dealing and with the hallway. You want to wait for the magnificent hall that's in the next world. So if you're dealing with all the unnecessary stuff in life, you're wasting your time. You're decorating the hallway. Meanwhile, you should be decorating your palace. So the idea is that Buddhism says to get rid of suffering, you have to remove from all your temptations. Judaism says, yeah, you shouldn't go after crazy desires, but at the same point, there's no reason to run away from all temptations, all desires that you have. What happens if you have a desire to do good? What happens if you have a desire to have children, desire to get married, desire to build there's good desires, not just bad desires. Buddhism teaches the way of life is to run away from the world. You run away, put yourself in a monk, in a mountain, under a tree, and that's how you're going to become happy. Judaism teaches no. Use this world to become happy. Everything that can be done in a kosher way. Marriage, eating, any possible different enjoyment and pleasure that you have in life can be done in a kosher way. Not only are you going to be happy in this world, but you're going to be happy also in the next world. So while this is such a fundamental difference, so I can't understand why anybody would be attracted to Buddhism, which runs away from everything, to just get happiness. Judaism says, no. We could get happiness, follow the Torah, follow the way that God, a divine power, went and told you how to get happy, while living in this world. While the way that you're supposed to do, you're supposed to make brachot, you're supposed to eat things, you're not supposed to fast all day, you're not supposed to go and live a life just secluded, you're supposed to live in this world. I want to finish off with I found this so fascinating. So Buddhism, one of the main fundamentals of it is meditation. What is the Pali? Pali is the native Indian language that was used. What is the Pali term for meditation? Listen to this. Behavana. The word is behavana. I'm like, I couldn't make it more similar to bikavana. Bikavana means to have concentration. What is meditation? Meditation, generally when you practice, there's different variations of meditations. Maybe one day we'll do a meditation class. And in fact, by the way, Judaism does speak a lot about meditation. Rabbi Aryeh Kaplan wrote 3 books on meditation in English. Meditation on the Bible, Meditation on Kabbalah, and Practical Meditation Guide. And there's different, so the meditation is not new to Judaism. There's very much incorporated in Judaism. But one of the ideas of meditation is to sort of block out everything, every external influence. And that's why, there's like breathing, breathe in, breathe out. It's not like you're going to forget and that's why you need to focus on your breathing. The purpose is that when you concentrate on your breathing, you're blocking out everything else. And that is the idea of, one of the main ideas of meditation is to remove yourself or to focus on just one thing. Focusing on one thing is also considered meditation. That's why they have certain meditation that you look at an object or you're meditating on a certain mantra. You're repeating a verse again and again and again. You're not putting it blank, but you're focusing everything on one particular thing. What is kavanah? What is kavanah when you pray? Says the Rambam in Mo'an Nevuchim. It says, "Shetifne machshavascha mikol davar." You're going to go and you remove your thoughts from everything else except for what you're praying right now. Exactly what meditation is. Bekavanah means to go and focus only on what you're dealing with right now. You're learning, concentrate on what you're learning. You're praying, concentrate on the words that you're saying. Know what you're saying. If you realize, we pray 3 times a day. Shmona Esra, they say 3 times a day, same things. Why do we change it up? Because when you meditate, what's a meditation? There's a mantra. You say the same thing again and again and again and again. There's so many mantras. There was once this Israeli went to Dalai Lama or whatever, one other Buddhist, and he's like from obviously a Jewish background. He says, I want to meditate. Give me a mantra. And he would not give him a mantra. And he kept on saying, give me a mantra, give me a mantra, give me a mantra. He says, I don't know what you want from me. You're a Jewish person. Your mantra should be Shema Yisrael Hashem Elokeinu Hashem Echad. He says, what are you asking me what your mantra? That should be your mantra. So, well, it could be, he said. Yitzhak Fanger he has a phenomenal story. You speak Hebrew? You heard his story? Unbelievable. So I think he did say the story. He did. Yeah, he did say the story. Yeah. So because he has this he wasn't doing Buddhism, he was doing something else, and I forgot what it was. he was doing something else, and he was like a master in it. He was like training people in it.
Was it yoga?
It wasn't yoga. It was like some sort of like healing something. Oh, right? Yeah, Reiki. Thank you, Reiki. Yeah, that's what it was.
This
So,
guy?
yeah,
Sounds really familiar.
he's a phenomenal speaker. He's very funny. So in any case, when you look at lost my train of thought. When you look at Buddhism in general, Buddhism has nothing to offer. Not only has nothing to offer, Judaism has everything that Buddhism has, everything real about Buddhism has to offer, and that's only a fraction of the gold of what's in Judaism. And really, when you go into everything else, when you really delve into it, it's all avodah zarah. You think about it that it's not. Bottom line is, it's all based off avodah zarah concepts. It's idolatry. Not only is it a fake religion, you're not allowed to even go into it. You're not allowed to even practice it. And maybe next week, because it's getting late, we'll speak about Hinduism. We'll we'll figure out yoga. Are you halakhically allowed to do yoga? How can you do the yoga? So, there's different things in yoga. So, B'ezrat Hashem, next week we'll deal with that and speak about, remind me next week, or we'll present that inside, also on how to deal with yoga and all these different things. But the bottom line, Buddhism, 100% fake, 100%. There's no even thought process that it'll be real. And number two, not only it's fake, you're not allowed to even delve in, you're not even touch it, because it's 100% avodah zarah, it's idol worship, and you have to stay very, very far away from it. Any questions?
I don't remember the speech clearly, but I remember someone saying that when the prophets used to get a prophecy, they'd be meditating.
Yeah, depending on meditating, they would be in, let's say, some of them would be in it's a different state of mind. Right. Depending on the level of the prophet, it could be somehow of a more of a dreamy type of state, but a very lucid. But it's while you're awake type of really. Maybe we'll speak about that. I'm thinking about doing, maybe after we finish this series, going through the 13 principles of faith, which speaks about prophecy. So maybe we'll do that as the next series. I'm thinking about it. We'll see. Okay. So we'll get into prophecy. Yeah.
In order to be considered a religion, it has to be divine based.
In order, you're talking about the scholars, or you're talking about it? No. But they call it a religion. They shouldn't. They should call it.
I don't understand their point.
It's just to get rid of suffering. Yeah. The main focus of Buddhism is to get rid of suffering. And how they get rid of suffering is they have the Four Noble Truths, and then how they get to it, they have the Eightfold Path of Buddhism, and how to be truthful and have the right thoughts. And it's just like it's exotic. It's exotic. It's not over here, it's exotic. The bottom line is, all these exotic avodah zarah, they have nothing to offer. They have nothing to offer. They're all the same avodah zarah.
I have a theory, sorry for cutting you off, that people nowadays are lacking a lot of spirituality because it's all about, the phone and what he has and she has that I don't have, and, whatever.
You mean the ego?
Right.
You, yes.
And Buddhism, you sit there and you get rid of all that and you're and whatever.
Right.
So that's why people want to be.
I guess so. People that get really stressed in the everyday life and they just run away from it. If only they would realize Shabbat is also like that. There's so many things in Judaism that just knocks Buddhism out of the ball. It's just like Buddha, it's like nothing. There's so much more beauty in Judaism, running away from the stresses, dealing with the stresses. Emunah. You want to deal with suffering? Emunah. Everything that happens is for the best. So much more powerful than running away. The idea is very, very important when you're dealing with coping mechanisms. When you run away from your problems, you are not going to be successful. It's just going to come back stronger the next time. You have to go and you have to deal with the issues. Buddhism teaches you to run away with it. Judaism teaches you to deal with it.
Buddhism is basically run away from reality.
Yeah, run away.
Reality is where you have to deal with it.
Exactly. Thank you. Exactly.
Okay, I'll play.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Hold on. Is Buddha an idol?
So, according to the Buddhist teachings, the fundamental teachings, they say no. But there are many people that do bow down and worship that idol. So technically, does it count as an idol?
So what's that one thing that has a hat and looks like Buddha? When I was in Thailand, and I wouldn't go into the temples, but you can see they're Buddhas.
So they have in Thailand also, if I'm not mistaken, they also incorporate a lot of Hindu into the, if not that, they also incorporate a lot of different avodah zarah in those. So I'll give you an example. So the guy Akashay, right, from India, he was telling me, he says that when people go and they worship, there was Buddhist temples and Hindu temples, and people would just go from one temple to another. It wasn't like, what are you, a Buddhist or a Hindu? And they're like, no, I do both. Like we just do everything. It's like a challenge, a little bit of a mix that they get into it. So these temples, you're not allowed to go into it because first of all, even if it's just an atheistic temple from like Buddhism and nothing else, it's still problematic. You're not allowed to go into these things. You're not allowed to stay into these things. It's very, very problematic in there. They have, and if you ever, there are pictures and idols all over the place in these temples. Not just Buddhism. They have other things in there as well. Some of them might only have Buddha, but generally they have a lot of others. This is, by the way, you ever realize when you have a Avodah Zarah, they're all forms of humans. Yeah. Why? Why only humans? Because or half animal or something like that. But why always in the form of human? Because it's all about me. I'm trying to figure. It's all a self-worship. The basic crux of it is just all about me. That's why they put everything is centered around that.
Didn't Hashem get rid of ideology, the worship part of it?
So the Sanhedrin removed the temptation for it. So there still exists today. Again, you don't have the magic that you don't have the demon. There's a lot of spiritual powers that I shouldn't say not in existence, but not in power as they used to be. So they lost the flavor in it, that they once would have had. But back then, idolatry was a very, very big desire, very, very big desire.
It's like one of the. Why does Hashem allow astrology to kind of give us that power? Why is astrology so? Why do people? So knowing the future, isn't that a form of worship and whatever? And why do people have that need? Why does he make it?
You mean why?
She was kind of taken away or whatever. I don't know.
First of all, nowadays astrology. How many people can read the stars and be like, yeah, Trump's going to win? Well, Trump won, but if any. Who do you know? I mean, some people say they can't, but there are people that make prophecies all the time, and then they make prophecies again, and they're always wrong. You're really good at being wrong. Even 50-50, they're somehow wrong. So why was there a power to begin with? The same idea why we have idolatry, why we had magic. I'm not idolatry, magic. All these things. Everything was done. Zelu madzeh. Everything was done so there should be a balance. Because there was such a strong spirituality, it has to be a balance. Well, maybe this is not true. Maybe he's not a prophet. Maybe he knows how to just read the stars. Maybe that's how he knows the future. So everything has to be an equal balance to make sure that there's free will by any given point in time. And that's why Rabbi Kamenetsky, if I'm not mistaken, I believe, goes on to explain that's why you don't see all these powers today. Demons you don't see so powerful. Magic you don't see so powerful. Because when was it powerful? When we had prophets. That's when you need to have magic. That's when you need to have batko. That's when you need to have demons involved in it. Because then when something spiritual happens, you'd be like, well, is it God? Or maybe it was, demons, magic, something else. It gives you free will, more free will as to a balance. Now that's gone, so that's also, now we don't have the batko, we don't have prophecy, we don't have all these things, that also goes on. I speak about this in the demon class.
I can't remember, I don't know why, but I can't remember it. I don't know, whatever.
Okay.
Can you show me the name of the idol that he was reincarnated?
Yes.
Okay, good. All right, that's it.
That's the only thing?
For now.
Okay, no more questions? Off-camera questions? Okay. All right. Chazak u'baruch.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.